Hello and welcome to the Radical Podcast, inspired by the essence of the word radical, proceeding from the root. We explore the roots of metaphysical wisdom.
This season is all about divination, tarot, and the power held within our intuition. This is The Radical with Nicole and Christina, the two metaphysical girls in the material world. Hello and welcome to The Radical. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Christina.
Today's episode is all about the death card in the Major Arcana. We're talking about death today because it is Scorpio season.
That's right. Scorpio. Nicole, you have a little picture here at the beginning of our note page. Will you read what it says?
Yes, it says, "Notice how the trees do not cling to their leaves. Fall is about releasing the old to make way for the new." Which is really, I think, a nice summary of the death card.
Mm-hmm. It's a natural process.
Nothing to fear.
I have a note on that too in one of my cards when we get to the card comparison. Should we just jump right in?
Yeah, and I have our astrological forecast for Scorpio season. This episode comes out October 23rd. And if you're listening today on the 23rd, Scorpio season began yesterday on the 22nd. Also on October 22nd, Neptune, which has been in Aries and retrograde, re-enters Pisces in its retrograde movement. November 1st, we have Samhain. November 5th, our super full moon in the sign of Taurus.
I always get to see a lot of moons in the fall, and probably just because of weather patterns and, time of day. So that I'm really looking forward to a big, beautiful harvest full moon.
On November 8th, Uranus, which has been in Gemini and is moving retrograde, re-enters Taurus in its retrograde motion. November 11th, Jupiter is retrograde, and Jupiter has been in Cancer. It'll stay in Cancer for its entire retrograde. On November 20th, we have our new moon in Scorpio. And then the next day, November 21st, we have the beginning of Sagittarius season. And as of today, October 23rd, when this episode comes out, we have the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, and Black Moon Lilith, all in the sign of Scorpio.
Ooh, Scorpio. I don't have, my north node is Scorpio. But I don't have any other big players in my star chart with Scorpio energy. So I wonder, listeners, if we have any people who have a lot of Scorpio placements, email us and tell us what you're looking forward to in the coming month, in the coming Scorpio season.
I'm a Scorpio rising, and therefore, because Pluto rules Scorpio, Pluto is my natal chart ruler.
Oh.
So this is very much a big component of my birth chart and the energy of Pluto and Scorpio. It's one of my big three and my chart ruler. So
classically, Scorpio was ruled by Mars. So that's why Scorpio is a little spicy. It's fire and water. It's not very watery, kind of like how Cancer is a little more watery. Scorpio has fire elements to it. That's what makes it a little spicy, a little fiery. You get stung.
The scorpion stinger.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on to our first tarot card for Scorpio season, and that is the Death card in the tarot deck. The card name, Death, but also some decks have it as having no name, that it is the unnamed card. It can be called mortality and transformation, and some decks just have it as the number. And it's a number with a lot of weight and information behind it, the number 13. So the card number 13, Roman numeral XIII. It is a water element, but we did mention that there is some fire energy in there because of its classically ruled planet was Mars. Is this a yes or a no? If you're doing a tarot pull for a yes or no. Like so many things in tarot, it's open for interpretation. So as many times as I've seen that the answer is no, I've read other people's interpretations of that. So because this is a card about transformation, and because this is a card with different elements to it, maybe it's not a clearly defined no. The zodiac sign is Scorpio. Revisiting our Scorpio podcast from last year, no mud, no lotus. And that is such the point of the mud and the decomposition is necessary for the birth and the bloom of the lotus. And you can't have one without the other. Some keynotes from that podcast that I pulled out: penetrate the darkness in search of emotional power and mysteries of life and death. And marking half the year below ground, descent, because this is also the time of year in the northern hemisphere of the end of the agricultural year. This descent is not good or evil. It just is. Like death, it just is. Nicole covered the season, 22nd of October to the 20th of November. Sometimes it's one or the other.
I think the 21st.
The 21st of November. And this is fixed water. We have Samhain, and other cultures call it the Day of the Dead, which is a fascinating story to read. The background of both of those celebrations. That in themselves would be a whole other podcast. But those two celebrations at that time, and culturally and historically, what they mean and what they represent, you can see how the death card is tied to Scorpio and why Scorpio is where it is on our wheel of the year and where it is. The planet is Scorpio's Pluto, and then I've already mentioned classically it was Mars, and this is the 8th house, the house of transformation. The mantra is I desire. I've got 2 crystals, the blue moonstone and black obsidian. Black stones and the color black traditionally are for protection and grounding, but black obsidian for releasing negative energy and releasing that energy so that you have a clear path to change. It helps you in that transformation of letting go, but also clearing the way. So black obsidian. I also like hematite a lot for this sort of transformation, because that is to me even more grounding and even more earth related and even more protective. But the correspondence is, the Hebrew letter is Nun, N-U-N, and the symbol for this as it's related to tarot is the fish. The meaning is decline and rebirth. The tree of life pathway is 14. That's between Netzach, which is triumph and endurance, and Tiparath, beauty. I found an interesting note on chakras. I've said before, I'm only really familiar with the major 7, but through this process, I've been learning more about some of the other minor or not as well known chakras. And the chakra associated with this from my book is the Alta Major. This is located at the back of the neck, at the base of the skull. And in my yoga training and in my yoga journeys, there's a lot of energy stored up there. There's some particular moves that we would do and poses we would do, especially in yin, where you would put a block on the mat and then you would rest the what is it called? Occipital ridge?
Occipital ridge.
That's it. On that block, and then you would rock your head side to side, and the sensations and the tension release for some people would be pretty intense. But as a chakra, this is associated with the energy of past lives, expanding consciousness, and awakening the process, or the awakening process. It's because it's thought to bridge the heart with your higher spiritual self. Yeah, at the base of the skull. And as we're thinking about this time of year, and we're thinking about the imagery and, the skeleton and the human body, and then my experience with the yoga poses and the yin poses I've done, focused on that part of the body, I feel like I'm like, okay, I get it. I felt that energy release before from that part of my body. So thinking about ways to connect to it deeper, that kind of works with me for this. But I also had another one of my guidebooks talk a lot about the root chakra with the death card. And if we go back to the imagery of the black cloak, the imagery of the death and decay, and going back to the earth, I can get that too. I can see how that would have some root chakra energy, especially if you're going through a deep change and you are, reverting and drawing your energy all the way back down to your root chakra so that you can bring that energy all the way back up. So that's my thought on chakras there. And I definitely want to dig in more when we do our season of chakras, dig in more to the Alta Major. That was fascinating to learn that today.
I haven't heard of that one. I like it.
I found very easily on doing an internet search, the internet has given me many charts with some of these other chakras on it, with some alignments and everything. And I'm like, I'm really excited to kind of talk about those energy centers and learn more about them. Going into symbols, this card has a lot of symbols. Everything on this card is a symbol. We have the skeleton, which is what endures of the body after death. And in our Western culture, in our collective conscious and our collective unconscious, skeletons generally mean that phase of life, death, of decline, of I'm just going to say that, of death. The black armor on and this is for the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but it could also be the black cloak on many other decks, or just the black color. It has to do with protection of death and also its invincibility, that it cannot be stopped. The armor represents its ability to keep going no matter what, but the black is also very protective. The white rose on the flag, and that flag in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, is a flag representing rebirth and renewal, because the white rose for purity and also being unbiased. And then there's also shafts of corn for the agricultural season. So what is given, and what is taken away is taken away. So it's just kind of like the standard of a cycle, not just the death, but also the cycle of rebirth. And when we talked about the sun, we talked about the red feather. Do you remember? The 3 cards that red feather symbolizing life force is on is the Fool, that red feather sticking out of the Fool's cap, the sun with the red feather in the baby's hair, right? Is it stuck to the back of the baby's head? And then in this card, the red feather is crumpled It is not standing straight up and unfurled. And that is the representation of the human life force, of the human vitality, declining and going down. There's a sunrise at the gates of the city that's in the distance. We were talking about sunrise and sunset. Oh, because we were just talking about Venus and how Venus is the morning and the evening star. This is the sun rising and setting, and that is renewal. That sun at the gates, and it's generally thought to be a sunrise, but it could be a sunset too, depending on how you look at it and where it fits in your reading. But essentially, the sun will come back. The sun will rise again. That is renewal. All the different types of people who were on that card. There's children and there's richly dressed people. There's somebody with a religious outfit on. Some cards have a king that is lying prone underneath a horse. And this symbolizes that all ages, all classes, all types of people, everybody's affected by this cycle of death and rebirth. I think one of the major themes of this card is change. And no one is exempt. One small note on history. The Grim Reaper. This is the kind of thing that the Grim Reaper, as it stands in our cultural, I don't know if lexicon is the right word, like our cultural consciousness of this skeleton with the black robe and how do you say that word? The Sith. But the Grim Reaper is a popular personification of death in our Western culture. It has the hooded skeleton wearing the black robe carrying the Sith. The name Grim Reaper and the artistic popularity of the features combined started about the 19th century. But I looked at a history of tarot cards of the death card, and from the 1500s to the 17, 18, 19, all of them had a skeleton with some form of reaping tool. And because this is for this time of year in Scorpio season in the fall, in the Western Hemisphere, this is the time of agricultural harvest and agricultural end. So we can see how the imagery of the skeleton with the scythe, that it was a way to reap and to harvest, and how that turned into the ending of this cycle. And then as it expanded out in popular culture, then it became more of a bringer of human death, of human mortality, of human, and you can watch almost any modern TV show or read a book and it's talking about the Grim Reaper or what death looks like. And you can find imagery, you can find a tie back to that imagery. But I feel that the tarot was influenced by or influenced this cultural figure of the Grim Reaper. But they did have a painting on the Wikipedia page from 1490 with the skeleton and the Sith. So it's been around for at least as long as that, if not longer.
I think it's really interesting that last week we talked about Venus. And when I was doing my research, how much Venus was brought up. And with the scythe imagery, a scythe has a long handle and a sickle is basically like a small scythe. It has just a smaller handle. And the sickle was instrumental in the birth of Venus or Aphrodite.
Yes. Well, these seasons, this is why we're doing this now, listeners, so that we can tie the seasonal meanings behind all of this and the flow of the year, and why these planets are associated with these images and with these cards and with these zodiac times at this time of year. Oh yes, that was one of the main stories of Venus's birth, was the tool that was used to, yeah.
Part of her origin story.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 13. The number 13 represents transformation, rebirth, renewal, and the cycles of death and rebirth. So very much in line with the themes for this card. The root vibration is 4 when you add the 1 and the 3. And 4 brings us the energy of stability, structure, discipline, foundations, and hard work. And so we have some energy of the 4. 13, of course, also carries the energy of 1, new beginnings, individuality, and 3, creativity, expression, and joy. And together, the 1 and the 3 together grounds all potential into reality. 13 is sometimes considered a karmic debt number. I have never heard that directly. It kind of came up in my research and it makes sense. This number as a karmic debt number is about lessons regarding hard work, responsibility, and discipline. Kind of makes me think of shadow work a little bit and doing some kind of like facing difficult truths. It kind of made me think of that. And 13 can also represent rebirth through effort. So we have that hard work again. Old ways needing to die, metaphorically, so that you can build a solid foundation for the new life that's trying to emerge and come forward. There is some superstition around this number that it's bad luck, but the numerology suggests that this number is more about powerful, intense, and transformative energy, and not really bad luck. The number 3 is also linked to the Ascended Masters. To me, this suggests the wisdom that we find and the growth that happens when we're transforming or going through a rebirth and death cycle. And the number 13 is also linked to goddess energy, divine feminine energy, and the 13 lunar months in a year. And it's also associated with our friend Venus. Here she is again. Friday the 13th in our culture is,
What's
bad
Friday?
luck.
I just realized that that's Venus's day. And it's always Friday. It's never like the 13th of Tuesday or anything. It's always Friday the 13th.
So Friday the 13th, superstition says this is like an unlucky day. Oddly enough, ironically enough, both Friday, like Christina just said, and the number 13 are associated with Venus. So the book I read suggested that the powers that be kind of came up with this narrative that it's unlucky to instill fear for the purposes of controlling the masses. And the book that I read is by Alana Fairchild, and she says, so Friday the 13th and the wild goddess energy associated with it was soon labeled as something to be eschewed rather than celebrated. So we see that the powers that be, and most likely, yes, the patriarchy took this, divine feminine energy, this day associated with divine feminine, and it became unlucky and scary, and there was a lot of fear associated with this day. So, yeah. Card comparisons. In my Zodiac Tarot, we have a skeleton holding a scythe, and the sun dips below the horizon. I view this as a sunset. I think that the sunset is more reflective of like the seasonal energy and the idea that this time of year is associated with like the underworld and things aren't growing. So to me, it makes sense for it to be a sunset.
Mm-hmm. And the days are getting shorter, shorter and shorter and shorter until midwinter. The sun is declining.
Yes. A scythe is also called a reaping hook. It is an agricultural tool used for cutting and harvesting grain. And last episode, like I mentioned, we talked about the sickle
Mm-hmm.
with Venus's myth. Without the sickle, there would have been no castration, there would have been no sea foam from which Aphrodite emerged. I know I already said it, but I'm still kind of blown away at because I said at the end of the episode last week that we're doing a complete 180 going from Venus into the death card. But yet here we are finding connections, and
Yep.
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's because we're going in seasonal order. And so we can we can see that we're making the connections. Yeah.
In my Medicine Woman Tarot, the death card is renamed Sunset. How
Oh.
appropriate. Just like the previous card, the sun is setting and we have a figure on horseback facing away from us. And the figure is riding towards the sunset, but at a very leisurely pace. In my Antique and Anatomy Tarot, we have another scythe. And it's almost like the handle of the scythe is, well, it is. The handle of the scythe is puncturing through the three skulls. And there's some red flowers that we can see kind of growing around the bottom of the scythe handle. And then there's two rods on either side with one skull each and some black flowers.
In that deck, there's always a lot of flowers. Your deck tell you, does the guidebook tell you what flowers they are? Or do you have to like, because those look like poppies to me, but I don't know enough about flowers to recognize them on sight. So that would be so fascinating to like.
I know, I wish it did explain.
You know what I mean?
Because I have to like Google image search
or
them.
at least tell us what flower it is so that then you can quickly find out. But they look like poppies, and then I'm like, ooh, poppies, because of the, you know what I mean? You go into a different state when you use the poppies, and it could be connecting to your unconscious, but I'm like, but I don't know if that's a poppy or not. But yeah, that's a powerful image.
Yeah, it's almost like when you watch, like right now I'm watching a Viking show, and when they kill their enemy and they want to like display the head. So there's kind of like this violence in this card because the skulls are
impaled.
Yes.
They're, yeah.
So coming out of like the Medicine Woman Tarot, where you have somebody just like riding on horseback towards the sunset, it's like, okay, like I get that. And then this one, has a little more of like a violent type.
And it just goes to show how just the image of a skull means death in our Western culture. Like immediately, without too much explanation, without too much other imagery, just the skull in any way, shape, or form, we think of mortality. We think of death. It's such a powerful image.
So the two flower colors, we have black and red, just like the suit of armor that the skeleton's wearing in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Black symbolizes power, protection, and releasing. Very Scorpio. And then red adds a sense of courage and strength. And then last but not least, in my Mystic Mondays deck, we have another skull. Just one. And there's a skull against a kind of coral colored and periwinkle colored background. And there's this black path that, from our vantage point as the viewer, goes from the foreground of the card to the skull's mouth. But now that Christina has taught me about the Alta Major chakra,
Oh.
if you can imagine that path and where it leads on the back of the skull, it's almost like that path would touch the occipital ridge, the Alta Major chakra. So, what I got from this card is a path leading within, a path leading to our shadow work, a path leading deeper within, like the deepest, our skeleton is like the deepest layer of our physicality. Like
Mm-hmm.
Christina said, it's what remains as our tissues decompose after we pass away. So it's like getting to our deepest root, doing our shadow work, and connecting to those deepest layers within. So that's kind of like what I saw from this path. And I love now that connection to that chakra point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to find out more about that, research more. But then for that matter, going back to your previous card, all of those skulls, the implement they're impaled on all go through the base of their skulls.
Yeah, that's true. And in one of them, the eye, the
Yeah.
left eye, but the other four, it's like the top of the head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
there's
human
a
skull as
lot
an
there.
image, yeah, can be. And here's the other thing too is that Nicole and I are looking at these cards on this day at this point in our lives, and what we see is not what you listeners might see when you look at these cards on the day that you look at them. And Nicole and I can look at these cards in 6 months and a year and see something completely different. That is the beauty of learning the meaning and the symbology and the themes and the colors, that it just gives us more information, so that when our intuition comes forward, we know more, we can feel more, we sense
Mm-hmm.
more.
And on the Antique Anatomy Tarot deck, there's one skull without like a lower jaw
Oh,
bone, same as Mystic Mondays.
yeah.
And does it matter to you when you're looking at the card, like how the skull is impaled, if it's missing part of the bone? I mean, you could get deep.
Yeah. Well, then we talk about the crown chakra, the Alta Major, and then the third eye. I mean, you can add in
Mm-hmm.
all different, a whole nother layer of energy centers in our physical human head, and the skull at the base of it, at the root of it. Okay, my cards. I'm starting with the Spirit Song Tarot. The author has as number 13, keyword transformation, with the other words transition and liberation. The author chose the cicada as the spirit animal of this card. I didn't know much about cicadas, but I did a very quick search and found out so much beautiful information. Listeners, if you have an affinity to this card, to that animal, or to the spiritual meaning behind it, I'll summarize by saying that the cicada is a representation of rebirth, and transformation, because of the cicada's life cycle of emerging from the ground after years of dormancy. It serves as a powerful metaphor for emerging from a period of silence or darkness or growth or seclusion into a transformed state. The cicada also represents immortality and resurrection. Those are another key words there. But then the spiritual enlightenment and voice, because of the cicada's powerful song, linked to spiritual realization and communication with the divine, there was a little story about cicadas being sacred to Apollo, the sun god in Greek and Roman mythology, because of their song in the height of the sun. Yes, yes. And I knew they had an interesting life cycle, but I didn't really tie that with the death card, but now it makes total sense. And also because of their life cycle, overcoming adversity and perseverance. And this really stuck with me today, divine timing. As a spirit animal, the cicada reminds you to trust the timing of your life. Don't rush things and wait for the right moment for things to happen. Just like the leaves falling from the trees at fall. Don't hold on to it. Let it go. And the cicada's lesson is just when the time is right, you'll know. It's time to emerge. From the mud comes the lotus. Trust the process.
And from the chrysalis comes the butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that is the card itself has a picture of a cicada. It's in hues of green. And if I had looked at that card, I wouldn't recognize it as a cicada. I know very little about it, but I'm so grateful to have learned so much about it today. The next deck that I have, the Wild Unknown Tarot, the author has it as 13, using the Roman numerals XIII. The keyword is death. The two other words they chose is closure and transformation. The card itself is a black and white card with no color, and it has a bird skeleton in I would say there's still some feathers on it, but it is in a state of decomposition. And you can imagine it being buried or suspended, but I guess it depends on how you look at it. But it is a bird skeleton. My Secrets of the Witch's Garden, again, has it as 13, death, keyword transformation. This is an autumnal graveyard scene. The leaves are off the trees. Some are just blowing in the wind, and there's a carpet of golden and yellow leaves on the ground in the graveyard. There's a woman in the background mourning over a grave. And in the front, there's a young child offering a little pumpkin to the character of death. Because the child is not afraid of death, we are taught to be afraid of death. We are taught to be afraid of change. That representation there of the child and the death is sort of that death. It's not good or bad. It just is. We don't have to be afraid of it. We're taught to be afraid of it. There's two crows. One is perched in the branches of one of the trees. The other crow seems to be following the death character. The death character is a skeleton walking with a black robe with a red lining. And we get to that black and red motif, and it's got its Sith, its scythe. How did you pronounce it?
I think I've been saying Sith.
Sith on its
Is that
shoulder.
right?
You know what? I think everybody knows what we're saying when we say it. But this card is beautiful card, very seasonal to where it falls in the wheel of the year and where it fall in the zodiac year. So I'm appreciating very much that when decks do follow the seasons with their cards as well. And then finally, I have the Sacred She, card 13. The name of the card is Transitioning. This card has a pink and purple clouds. Yeah, clouds motif at the top part of the card, and then the cloud motif reversed on the bottom part of the card. In the center of the card is a figure 8 standing upright so that it looks like the number 8. In the top circle of the figure 8 is a child, a baby, in the womb, in this pink layered, almost like rose petally, but womb-like state. The bottom part of the figure 8 is a skull, a human skull, And what it looks like to me, probably because I was thinking of roses for some reason, like, but it looks like there's petals around the skull, but those petals are beginning to decompose. They're not as vibrantly colored, but I guess they could also be bones, but they could also be parts of tissues of the human body, but it's a skull. The figure 8 is flowing. It's pink and black and a darker color black. And through the center of the card is just a black band. One flows into the other, just as life, just as the theme of this card: change, letting go, dying, rebirthing, letting go to make room for something else.
It reminds me of those, there's probably a name for them, but those timers, those sand
Yeah.
timers.
Mm-hmm.
And then when your
Hourglass.
time, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
An
yep.
hourglass. So it reminds me of an hourglass, and once the time runs out from the top of the hourglass, once all the sand runs down, what do? You flip it over and you have your time back.
Yeah.
You have a new cycle.
And the
but
cloud
you're constantly letting it sort of drain down. You flip it over, you begin again.
Yeah. Figure 8, hourglass. And it's as above, so below. But those are my cards, and we will have those card comparison pictures on our Substack account, which I love looking at. Whenever Nicole posts them up on Thursday when they get released, I love looking at the card comparisons over and over again.
So to summarize the death card, we have themes of inevitable change and endings. And when I'm preparing this section, I know I've said it in a previous episode, but I am such a geek and a nerd when it comes to diction and choosing words. I feel like I'm just so intentional. And so it is endings and change that are inevitable, because that is the nature of our life as humans on Earth. And there's a saying, if you're not changing, you're dead, basically. So that is just the inevitable state of our life here on Earth. There's a sense with this card of purging, shedding old skins, reincarnation, metamorphosis, regeneration, and evolution. Yes, change, almost this deeper, more change of a greater magnitude, changing forms, surrendering and releasing rather than clinging or clutching, surrendering to the process and letting, just like the trees in autumn, letting things go. My Zodiac Tarot guidebook says that death is the organic and vital process through which we abandon all that is not viable to make room for new blood and new life. I loved that. The death card also symbolizes a gateway, a threshold, or a doorway, going from one side to the other and emerging as something different. This card in reverse suggests that we could be resistant to or fearful of change. And when we resist, it's a more painful experience.
Isn't there a saying, what we resist persists?
Yes. So, yeah, it's kind of, we can choose how to engage with this energy. We can surrender and allow the process to happen, or we can resist, and it's not so fun, speaking from experience. A reversal could also indicate complacency or staying in your comfort zone. Growth does not happen here. Also clinging and clutching, like I mentioned, to what is known versus embracing the unknown. We can be fearful of change because we don't know what's on the other side. So that it can be a very fear-based resistance. It can be fear of the unknown that makes us want to stay complacent, stay where we are, and cling to what we know. It could also indicate avoiding what we already kind of subliminally know needs to change and just delaying it, pushing it out, procrastinating, and not sort of just ripping the Band-Aid off and doing what we need to do.
Just surrender to it. There's an
Mm-hmm.
element sometimes of surrender, because what we resist persists. And the question to write the reversal, ask yourself, how can I let go? And just take it day by day, step by step. Start small and then work your way up to the big releases, to the and to find a way to let go. Because we can't bring in more if we don't have room, if we don't have space.
Exactly. And I had a couple more. I wrote these under personal experiences, but it was more like personal musings. I thought it was interesting how this time of year during the fall season, what we do as people, we go and watch or go and view the changing colors of the leaves. Where I live, I'm very close to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and that is just a huge thing this time of year. And I used to live in Colorado Springs, and you would drive into the mountains to look at the aspen trees changing colors. And I thought,
We were there
how
last year.
we were. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny to me that and like a sunset too. That was the other thing I wrote down. The changing autumn leaves are a sunset. In a way, these are both deaths, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we as humans marvel at them. But when it comes to death in our own life, we're afraid of it. It's not beautiful anymore. It's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. When we're witnessing our own decline, when we're witnessing or entering the autumn of our lives,
The sunset of our lives. Yeah.
as we age and as we grow and as we learn, that we have a very different, well, some people have a very different relationship with that in our own lives as we do with nature, because we know that nature is going to come back, and we don't know how we're going to come back. We don't know what's next for us, for our on our journey. Yeah.
And my other musing is that shadow work is really being our own Grim Reapers and scything,
Slicing away.
yeah, our own internal landscapes. Okay, I have 3 messages from the universe today. And I am using my Oracle of Pluto deck again. The first card is going to be for everybody. And the next 2 cards you can choose if you want the first one or the second one, which technically would be card 2 or 3. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So this first one is for everybody, and it is the Lion. And just a reminder that with this deck, these are kind of like our animal spirit guides in like the underworld, shadow world of Pluto and Scorpio. So the first one is Lion, the divine masculine, pride, the father. Often referred to as the king of the animal kingdom, the lion embodies the energy of the divine masculine within us. The presence of this card may also point to a fatherly relationship, whether with your biological father or a chosen father figure. As with the bear card and maternal relations, our relationship with our dad may not always be good or easy. However, when we approach the archetype of the Father through the lens of the divine, we are given the opportunity to define what this masculine energy needs to represent to us to feel empowering. When we speak of the divine masculine and feminine through the lens of spirituality, we are not speaking about gender, but rather the two sides of nature that exist in all things. These energies are one way to think about the two halves that make us whole, and they exist on a spectrum in varying degrees. Masculine energy is often thought of as the active principle, the side of us that is ambitious, driven, and ready to make moves. Feminine is the passive principle, open, receptive, observing. The lion asks us about our relationship to our own masculine energy. What does this energy mean to you? What feelings arise when you read these words? Take pride in this part of you and nurture it well. Further reflection, the archetype of the king or ruler appears in both unevolved and evolved energy, just like everything else. The shadow version of a king is the tyrant, the authoritarian, the dictator. An enlightened ruler is benevolent and values the people who make up his kingdom. He is willing to listen to their wants, needs, and desires, while also respecting the weight of responsibility and the power he commands. Locate the king inside of you. How can you feel embodied and balanced when in power? Okay, so the next two cards, you get to choose which message you want. And the first one is the cardinal. Angelic presence, love, divinity, empathy, devotion, passion. The brilliant red cardinal is most often thought of as a harbinger of divine messages and signals the presence of visitors from heaven. These might be loved ones who visit us from the other side, spirit guides, or even an angelic presence. To pull the cardinal in a reading is a sure sign that you are watched over and protected by divine forces and unconditional love. If you have recently lost someone you love, the cardinal signals their presence around you. Outside of their connection to the higher realms of consciousness, cardinals are often associated with love, harmony, bliss, and devotion, as these ruby red lovers mate for life. This is a call to get honest with yourself and your heart. Who and what are you devoted to right now? Our hearts burn with passion for many things, and it's important to do what we can to tend to our passions to ensure they stay alive. If you feel out of touch with your heart and its desires, this is your sign to find a way to open back up. When our hearts are open, we can greet everyone and everything with compassion, empathy, and tenderness. Further reflection, how does looking at a situation through the lens of compassion shift your perspective? How does looking at yourself through this lens change you? Who or what makes you feel alive? Name it out loud and move closer to it. And last but not least, the rabbit. Fast-paced change, decision-making, the need to act. Rabbits are notorious for being skittish. They are hypervigilant and ready to act at the slightest hint of danger. The arrival of this card means you must embody the quick-acting nature of the rabbit now, as things are about to start changing at a fast pace. To pull this card hails the arrival of an opportunity, to be sure, but it is a fleeting one. It is imperative both to recognize this and to act in alignment with yourself. If you hesitate for too long, the moment will pass you by. But if you act too quickly, you may find yourself in over your head. While this is a delicate balance to strike, it is one that can be mastered. If you are someone who struggles with indecision or overanalyzing, the pressure of this moment may cause you to freeze. It may be helpful to step out of the logical and instead tune into your gut instinct. Be ready to take action one way or another, but don't act out of fear. Further reflection. Ideally, the opportunity this card points to is an exciting one. It may even be an unexpected one. Often there is a leap of faith that is required on some level. Trust yourself to roll with the punches and handle whatever is thrown at you. Especially if you don't have time to plan everything out. There's plenty of potential present with the rabbit card, as these animals are often associated with fertility.
Thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe. We'll be back next week with more Scorpio as we roll through this season. So until then, listeners, thank you and we love you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. The Radical Podcast is created and produced by Nicole and Christina.
Music by Van Horton. His Instagram is Van Horton Music. Stay in touch with us at linktr.ee/theradicalpodnc.